Hunger makes honest men private. Dagon had bread under his left arm, not much. Enough to become ashamed of if discovered and not enough to become generous with if praised. The worst amount. He had intended to eat it after the crowd thinned. The crowd had not thinned. People followed Jesus badly. That was Dagon's professional opinion. They followed like people who had forgotten roads require return. Jesus was speaking somewhere ahead. The wind did what wind does with truth. Crowds were supposed to want something obvious. This crowd had too many hungers layered together, and Jesus seemed to move among them as if he could hear each one separately. Dagon sat on a low rise where he could see exits. Mara appeared beside him carrying a water jar. He did not ask how she found him anymore. Some people were answered by roads. Mara was answered by need. "You are far from the teaching," she said. "I hear better at a distance." That is not usually true. It is when people near the speaker forget they have elbows. She lowered the jar and sat without asking permission. "You have food." Dagon looked at her. That was not a question. "No, then why say it? To see if you would lie, and you are thinking about which lie fits the weather." He should have moved away. Instead, he adjusted the cloth under his arm, which was as good as confession to anyone with Mara's eyes. "A man can have food," he said. "Yes. A man can keep food. Also, yes. Then we agree." "No." He looked toward the crowd. Children had begun to lean against mothers. Men who had stood tall for the teaching now shifted weight in the old dance of tired legs. Somewhere a baby cried, and the sound spread hunger through the people faster than any speech. "They should go," Dagon said. "Some say that. Some are correct." Mara poured water into a small cup and handed it to him. He took it because his pride had lost too many battles with thirst to pretend anymore. "If they go now," she said, "some will not reach food before dark." Then they should have thought of that before following a teacher into nowhere. "Have you never followed something too far?" He drank. The water was not berry sweet. It tasted of clay and dust and the jar's cold belly. "I follow roads," he said. "Roads are worse. They pretend not to ask for faith." He almost smiled, almost. Movement passed through the disciples near the front. Dagon could not hear the words, but he knew the shape of a practical argument when he saw one. Men pointing toward villages, spreading hands to show emptiness, looking at the crowd the way Dagon looked at a locked chest. "There," Dagon said. "Sense has arrived." Mara watched. Jesus turned toward the disciples. Something in their posture changed. Dagon knew that too. That was the body learning it had been volunteered. He laughed once. "What?" Mara asked. He told them to solve it. "Can you hear?" "No, I can see a man regret being close to holiness." That made her smile despite herself. Then the small food appeared. At first, Dagon thought his own guilt had learned to walk. A boy near the front held out loaves and fish, not enough for a family with appetite, certainly not enough for the crowd. The sight of it irritated Dagon more than if there had been nothing. Nothing would have kept the problem clean. Small food made everyone responsible for what smallness meant. The boy looked terrified, not of Jesus, of the crowd seeing what he had. Dagon's hand closed around his own wrapped loaf. Mara noticed. Of course she noticed. "Do not," he said. "I did not speak. You were about to." "No, you were about to look." She turned her face toward him fully then. Dagon. He hated his name in her mouth when she used it gently. It gave him nowhere to put the fight. "It is not enough," he said. "For whom? For them." "No. Then what is the point?" "Maybe enough is not where it begins." He looked away first. Jesus took the small food. The crowd quieted unevenly, like a field settling after wind. Jesus lifted the food and blessed it. Dagon felt accused. No one knew about his bread, except Mara and himself. The disciples began distributing. If Jesus meant to perform wonder, why involve the men who had wanted the crowd dismissed? Why make hands that had pointed toward villages now carry bread toward people they had nearly sent away? A man near Dagon received a piece, stared at it, then looked toward his wife. She shook her head. He broke it and gave half to the child between them. Another woman opened a cloth bundle with studied casualness and added something to what had been given. A strip of dried fruit, then someone else. Then someone behind them cursed softly and produced bread with the shame of a man surrendering a weapon. Dagon saw it happen in pockets, not cleanly, not as explanation, as invitation spreading faster than certainty. Mara did not reach for his loaf. She let him keep the decision. The first disciple reached their rise carrying a basket. His face had changed since the argument at the front. He looked tired, confused, and more careful than before. "Bread?" he asked. Dagon stared at the basket. There was bread in it, actual bread, not enough to solve the world, but enough to make his hidden loaf feel suddenly heavier than stone. No, Dagon said. Mara took a piece. The disciple moved on. She broke hers and held half out. Dagon looked at the offered bread, then at the cloth under his arm. Cruel woman, he said. Often, you plan this. I am not that holy. No one is. Eat. He took the half she offered. It was ordinary bread, coarse, a little dry, better than pride. He chewed slowly. Below them the crowd continued changing. Some received, some shared, some still guarded. Children moved more freely once mothers stopped calculating the road back in silence. The air itself seemed less sharp. Dagon unwrapped his loaf. Mara did not look. He knew she did not look on purpose, also cruel. He tore the loaf into pieces and put them into the basket when the next disciple came by. The man did not praise him. Dagon was grateful. Praise would have ruined the whole thing. But the disciple's eyes flicked to his face for one moment, not knowing him, not judging, only registering that another hidden thing had entered the open. The basket moved on. Dagon felt lighter and angrier for it. It still is not enough, he said. Mara watched the crowd. Then it will have to travel. That sounded like something Jesus would say, which made Dagon distrust it immediately. The sun lowered. People ate. Not a metaphor, not a lesson dressed in bread. They ate. Dagon held to that because a hungry person deserves the dignity of plain fact before anyone turns the meal into meaning. They ate. And somehow, when the baskets came back, there was still bread. Dagon did not know how much had been hidden, how much had been blessed, how much had been multiplied, how much had been opened by shame turning into courage. Anyone who claimed to know all of it was lying or too holy to trust. He knew only this: the crowd had been too large. The food had been too small. Jesus had refused to send them away. And by evening, Dagon's own bread had traveled farther than his fear. Not nothing. He hated that too, but less than before. When the crowd thinned and Mara had gone with the child to help a woman whose nursing had failed, Dagon walked away from the slope until the noise was the noise of a hill, not of people. He found a flat stone above the path and sat. He put his hands on his knees. He watched a beetle work its way up a stalk of dry grass and lose its grip and start over. He felt the bread of the day still in his teeth and the shame of the day still in his chest, and he did not know whether to keep walking the road back to his old work or stay with whatever this thing was that he had not asked to join. He decided. He had decided 3 times that day already and had unmade each decision before the dust had settled on it. This time, the deciding settled and stayed. He would stop being the man he had been on the road. He did not yet know what man he would become instead. He only knew he was tired of the one he had been. He did not hear the sandals. He felt the stone shift slightly as someone sat down beside him. He did not look. A hand came into the edge of his vision. The hand was open. In the palm was one small seed, round and brown and so small that the lines of the palm were larger than the seed. "This is mustard," the voice said. Dagon did not move. "It is not magic. It is a seed. You can plant it. It will grow. If you do not plant it, it will dry. If you carry it long enough, you will forget you are carrying it. Then one day you will plant it without remembering where it came from. That is the part I like best." The fingers tipped slightly. The seed rolled into Dagon's palm. The hand withdrew. Dagon closed his fingers around the seed before he had decided to. He looked up. The man was already 3 steps away. "I am not yet good enough for this," Dagon said. The man did not stop walking. "No one is," he said. "Plant it anyway." Dagon sat on the stone a long time. The beetle reached the top of its stalk. The wind moved over the hill. The seed was warm in his closed hand, then cool, then warm again because he kept opening and closing his fingers on it as a man does with a thing he has not yet been given permission to lose. He did not plant it that evening. He did not plant it that year. He would carry it through everything that came after, and one autumn, in a different country, with a different woman, on a different field, he would press it into the ground without remembering anymore